Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Craig Burrell, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Petty Officer Sarah Newman. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony around Australia. During the ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors. Please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. Please sit if you wish to do so. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Lance Corporal John Daniel Potter. Usually known by his middle name, Daniel, John Potter was born on the 16th of April 1884 in Mount Gambier, South Australia, to John and Sarah Potter. He was educated locally at the public school at Glen Burnie and went on to work as a miner. He also spent 2 years serving with the Scottish Company of the South Australian Infantry Regiment. In 1910, his father died, leaving his mother dependent on her son's income. In November 1914, a few weeks after the outbreak of the war, John and his brother Joseph enlisted together in the Australian Imperial Force. They were posted to the 3rd Light Horse Regiment and underwent a period of training before leaving Australia on the same troop ship bound for overseas service. The 3rd Light Horse Regiment was first sent to the Middle East, where it continued training in desert camps of Egypt. Although originally determined to be unfit for service on Gallipoli, the Light Horse were sent without their horses when more men were needed. Arriving in May, the 3rd Light Horse Regiment largely played a defensive role on Gallipoli. However, at the end of July 1915, Joseph Potter received a bayonet wound to the thigh. His wound became badly abscessed, and he left his brother John behind as he was invalidated to Australia and eventually discharged from the army. John and the other Australians on Gallipoli were evacuated towards the end of 1915, returning to Egypt, where the AIF underwent a period of training and reorganisation. Those weeks and months proved hard for many, and at the end of March, Potter was court-martialed for breaking camp and going into a local town. After serving his punishment, his discipline improved, and in mid-May 1916, he was promoted to Lance Corporal. By this time, the 3rd Light Horse Regiment was in a position defending the Suez Canal. On the 1st of June 1916, it was camped not far from the Egyptian town of Romana. At 0630 in the morning, a Turkish aircraft flew over the camp and started dropping bombs. Potter dashed to get some horses out of the way when he was struck by one of the bombs and was killed immediately. The 10 bombs dropped by the enemy aircraft resulted in the deaths of 10 men, including 2 of Potter's mates, with 16 more wounded and the loss or death of nearly 50 horses. Captain Chaplain Hunter McGowan wrote to Mrs. Potter in Mount Gambier to say, "You will find solace in the thought that he died at his post, and to say that the Empire loses a good defender is a commonplace remark. And while true, I trust that your son's example will help others to voluntarily enter and do their part bravely in this great effort." Dan Potter was buried not far from where he was killed, and after the war, his grave was exhumed and he was reinterred in the Karnata War Memorial Cemetery north of Cairo. Under the simple epitaph, sadly missed, Lance Corporal Daniel Potter was 32 years of age. His name is listed on the honour roll to my right, amongst 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. A photograph of his headstone is displayed beside the pool of reflection. This is one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Lance Corporal John Daniel Potter, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the ode and the sounding of the last post.
We shall grow not old, as we are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We'll remember them.
forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozieres or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. Thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and good evening.